Hey, EDU300, this is Billy. We are here on a digital citizenship module. Lost words here, sorry. And we have a special guest tonight. It's Jen Scheffer. I'm going to let Becca go ahead and introduce her. Go ahead, Becca.
All right, hey EDU300, I hope you guys are feeling great after your spring break. It's an honor to introduce my friend and colleague Jen Scheffer, who will talk to you guys a bit tonight about digital citizenship. Jen is a certified Google trainer and innovator, digital citizenship chat co-moderator, and the mobile learning coach at Burlington Public Schools and facilitator of the BHS Help Desk, which is extremely cool. And I'll throw in that when I met Jen at EdCamp Boston 2 years ago, speaking with her really showed me how much students can be empowered when they're given access to really authentic applications of technology. So without much further ado, Jen, it's your show.
Wow. Well, thank you guys both for having me. It's definitely an honor to be able to talk to your students about something I'm really passionate about, and that's digital citizenship. I was looking at your module, and I have to add somebody that they should definitely follow on Twitter, and that is my partner in crime. Her name is Mary Alice Curran, and your students should definitely follow her. Her handle is MBFXC. Her name is Mary Alice Curran. She's actually the founder of the Digital Citizenship Chats, and is my mentor, really, and somebody who talks the talk and walks the walk and is really an advocate for student voice. And what's really exciting about the Digital Citizenship Twitter Chats is that we're actually changing the format, and we're making it more challenge-based, because we have found that a lot of these Twitter chats become an echo chamber. It's a lot of, great praise and people all agreeing with one another. They have the same mindset. We have to leverage student voice, give students choice, and frankly, we're kind of at the point where let's not just talk about this, let's actually do it. And Mary Alice has coined the phrase that digital citizenship needs to be a verb. And I couldn't agree with her more. So we're developing, like I said, a challenge-based series of digital citizenship opportunities and activities. And for the month of April, we're not crazy. People might think we are, but we are actually going to challenge schools and school districts to start integrating Snapchat into their curriculum in innovative ways, in positive ways, because I'm sure you all know that Snapchat does make mainstream media headlines, but like so many social media tools, those headlines are negative. So Mary Alice and I and so many others who are passionate about digital citizenship are dedicated to changing the conversation and getting those headlines to be positive. And so we are learning from the students, as we often do, and this exploration of Snapchat is taking learning from students to a whole nother level, because Snapchat is the one tool that I have stayed away from. And I said, you know what, the kids are on it, especially teenagers. For your students who are watching, I have spent the majority of my career working with high school students, and they are way ahead of the curve when it comes to Snapchat. They know the app inside and out. And so we want to learn from them, and we want to figure out ways that we can use that tool to share positive stories that are taking place in our district, whether that's the high school, the middle school, and all of our elementary schools. So what my students will be doing in the help desk is creating a series of tutorials to school us old educators on how to use Snapchat. And you guys might already know how to use it, but there's a lot of bells and whistles and different ways to navigate through the app, and frankly, it's a lot of fun. We've been playing around with some of the different features like the face swap and just getting to know the tool and having a blast. And I've realized just through the bit of exposure that I've had that you can share not only photos but videos as well. One of my students did an app smash with Snapchat. He recorded 10-second videos, and then we pieced them into iMovie, and we put that on YouTube to introduce the whole Snapchat challenge. So that's what we want to do, and we want, like Mary Alice always says, change the conversation. and highlight schools that are progressive, that are thinking about ways that we can leverage this technology to create a more positive digital space for our students to be a part of, and really to show that, you know, this is not a bad tool. Oftentimes social media tools get a bad rap. It's not the tool that's bad inherently. It's what students do on that tool that can sometimes contribute to a negative digital footprint. And we want to change that. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation of what we're going to be doing with Twitter and just changing the conversation, because and what we're going to do is we're going to do a Google Hangout similar to this format. We're hoping to get a full panel, 10 different schools, and allow them to share their stories. You know, how have they taken the plunge into Crazyville? How are they using Snapchat to communicate with their students and parents too? Because a lot of parents now are Generation X, and they're pretty savvy when it comes to these tools. And parents need to be aware. They need to know how to use these tools. They can't pretend like they don't exist, and they can't, you know, turn a blind eye and just say, well, you know, I'm just gonna, you know, let my child be out on these platforms, and I'm just not going to take the time to get to know what they're doing and who they're doing it with. So I would definitely encourage your students to check out the hashtag on Twitter. And it's hashtag DIGCIT, DigCit. And I guess I'll stop and ask you, Becca, have your students explored Twitter chats and hashtags? Are they familiar with all the lingo, or butt in when at any time? For sure.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to butt in and just say it's so timely that you said that you're looking to use Snapchat as an educational application and for community engagement, because I was out to dinner not that long ago talking to some friends who have a middle school age daughter, and we were talking about how social media is used in education but also in marketing, and I made a prediction that, you know, we were, you know, years ago resistant to the idea of Facebook for education, Twitter for education, Instagram, and I said, I bet I'm going to need to learn how to become facile with Snapchat and how I can apply that educationally. And your comment about how you're actually doing that just shows that it's timely, because, you know, if Chef's on it, then this is definitely something to embrace, because kids are using it. Why not teach kids to use it in a way that's positive and, you know, pro-community? So I just couldn't help but grin when you said that, because it wasn't too long ago that I said to myself, I need to download Snapchat and figure out a way to use it with purpose and more meaning. And face swaps are pretty funny.
They are quite comical and sometimes scary.
It's interesting with a lot of my students, and this ties into Snapchat, they're not really on Twitter anymore. They're on Snapchat.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. I think kids, as soon as the adults started getting onto Twitter, the kids all left. Well, it happened first with Facebook, and now it happened with Twitter. And I think, just like we did growing up, we want a private space, and you know, just to hang out with our friends. We used to do it back in the day, face to face. Now students have tools that they can do it virtually. And they're so overscheduled, so many kids, that, you know, they just want to hang out, and the only place they can do it is in an online space. I've had some conversations with, and I love that you mentioned that companies are using Snapchat, because they are for marketing and promotion, and that's my background too, is in marketing education. So if you have, you know, Forbes, for example, if you go to Forbes' Twitter account, they have, I think, 4 million followers. Their profile picture is a link to being able to add them on Snapchat. So if you have a company like Forbes on Snapchat, like you said, they're using it in a purposeful way as a corporation. So these are viable career paths for kids, and it might not be Snapchat, you know, 3 to 5 years from now. It'll be something else. But if students can learn how they could potentially start working for some of these companies or be, social media strategists, and there's just so many career opportunities. I'm a little bit envious of them, to be honest, because they just have so many great opportunities. But they don't see it the way we do. They see it as a fun place to just, I'm at the mall or I'm eating at a restaurant. And it's interesting because I hope they don't leave Snapchat because they're going to say, oh, here come the adults, here come the teachers, here come the administrators, they found us, we just want to be left alone. Yeah, just leave us alone and let us be on Snapchat. But, what I've learned is that they can add our, I don't even have the terminology yet, they can add us on Snapchat. It's Burley_schools is our Snapchat.
I'm following you guys, Jen.
Thank you. We haven't done much with it yet, but we're going to.
I was just looking to see if you had any stories. They call stories. Your update.
Your story.
So, but the kids don't realize is that they can add us and look at our stories, but we don't have to see their stories, and we might not want to see their stories. So you're right. They have to learn a little bit. We made flyers actually that we're going to hang around the school that have the picture of the Snapchat account that they can follow. They can just scan it and it goes right to it. And we actually had to put sort of a disclaimer on the flyer that says, we will not see your stories, but you can see our stories. So they still have that private space. But what I want my students to do, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think I've done a good job at educating my students about really nothing is private. So, especially with Snapchat, they think, oh, you can just make it so that it's going to disappear in 2 seconds. Literally 2 seconds. Well, in literally 2 seconds, I can take a screenshot of that, whatever you just sent via Snapchat, and then I can do whatever I want with it. And they say, well, you get notified if somebody takes a screenshot. Well, that's great, but what are you going to do? It's not in your hands anymore. It's out of your control. So my students have become, I think, really strong digital role models for their peers. And, I want them to be leaders in saying to students, just because you're on this quote-unquote private Snapchat application, you're really not. So I think we just need to be constantly, and when I say we, I mean everyone in a school community, including parents, we need to be, educating about digital citizenship and the consequences, whether they be positive or negative for our kids and their future. We all teach students manners, say please and thank you and excuse me, and everybody's responsibility is to teach manners. Well, in 2016, it's everybody's responsibility to be teaching digital citizenship. And if you don't understand that as an educator in the 21st century, you've got to get on board. You can't ignore it.
Yeah, Jen, can I interject for just one point?
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that we're doing with our students in this class, EDU300, is having them have that understanding that the digital footprint means quite a bit, especially in the world of education. So our PLN project is huge. And we've actually, within that PLN project, that they're creating an online portfolio, both through Twitter and through a blog website, because really that's your modern day resume. A resume is dated. It's not interactive. It doesn't really show a glimpse of your work and how you feel and what you do and how you treat your kids. It's just a piece of paper, really. So we're trying to stress to our students that, they have to have an online presence. So they can understand where our kids are coming from, where this generation's coming from. It's really important that we get in and we use these tools and we dive into them.
Yeah, and I don't want to hijack Jen's presentation time, but this makes me think of a story. I told my students, do you guys need me to put my headphones in?
No, you sound good over here.
Okay. When we were prepping for this module, I teach juniors and seniors, and we started talking about the concept of Googling yourself. But we're going to pause for a minute. That's another story. They were talking about how their Snapchat, their Twitter, it's all private, things that they haven't shared. They just exist in this space. And I told them the story about how when I first Googled myself as an educator, I realized that my Friendster profile, which I had pretty much forgotten existed, I just let it die with Friendster.
Wait, what? Friendster?
You know, Friendster?
Heard of it?
Jeff, are you at least old enough for Friendster?
I don't.
It was the first social media site.
Was that before MySpace or after?
Before MySpace.
I was going to say, you haven't got a friend request yet.
Friendster was pre-MySpace. That's how ahead of the curve I am. I was on Friendster, and it became obsolete. However, many years later, all of Friendster's data was sold to one of those search for a person websites. And one day I Googled myself, as I often do, being a good digital citizen and also maybe a narcissist, and I found all of the photos from my Friendster account posted under this profile I never set up for myself. And it was nothing salacious, but it was nothing I wanted on the internet because it was old, and it was just evidence that, you know, the data that you leave there, if you're not mindful of it, who knows what could happen if the company is sold or if there are changes. Like, it still exists, and my college photos were on a profile of my name. Luckily, I could just email them and say, this is me, please remove it, but it might not be that easy in the future. My other story was that in the talk about Googling yourself, my students, of course, they started immediately Googling themselves. And it was odd the way one of my students who's a football player started thinking about digital citizenship by seeing some of his weaker plays posted in photographs. And he thought, I don't want that on the internet. And there's a difference between, you know, honest media representation of what happened and what you put there, but it definitely started getting the gears turning about, you know, what you want people to see and what you don't want them to see. So, I mean, any access point I think is valuable. I'm sorry, Chef, I just went on.
No, I love that you said that, and I do the same thing, you know, teaching kids that they can control what appears in that Google search, and that they can sort of strategically develop a high Google ranking. And when they Google their name, they want, like, if an employer or a college admission rep does the same thing, they want that their blog to be the first thing that pops up. And so all of my students blog, no matter, I'm not necessarily a traditional classroom teacher, but if I was still, regardless of the content area, I would have all my students blogging. I would be wanting their work to be published for a global audience. And I think when kids do that and they realize this is not something that you're going to submit and just turn into me and I'm going to give you feedback and give you a grade and then that's it. When they're publishing and you know, it is for that global audience, and they can see their blog statistics, they can see the traffic that's coming to their blog, they can have somebody like George Couros, who has over 100,000 followers, has retweeted their work and is spreading their words literally all over the world. That's really powerful for kids, and it starts to develop some, what I hope to be, some intrinsic motivation for them to continue blogging and build that digital resume, like Billy was saying. So, you know, even before you go in for the job interview, if you have a strong digital presence, if you have your blog and you have your LinkedIn account and you have a presence on Instagram, and, you know, depending on the career field you want to get into, you should have a strong presence on these platforms, and the employer is going to know a lot about you before they even interview you. And
yeah, you know what, Jen? Oh, sorry, cut you off. But it's kind of like the flip side of that too. Is argument is, hey, well, some kids aren't comfortable putting their work online, and what I like to say is, hey, learning's hard and it can be uncomfortable. So one of our jobs as educators is to kind of make them realize what they can become. I mean, they're not there yet, growing, and they need to understand that. You know, I'll use myself as an example. I never saw myself as a person who could be a blogger. Recently, I've sat out the past year and I said I'm going to begin writing more in blogging because I think it's important to show what I do in my classroom, to share what I do, because I've learned so much from people that I read their blogs. So our kids need to be kind of within reason, challenged to step out of their comfort zone and to do hard things and do things that are uncomfortable, so they can kind of uncover and unravel things that they're capable of doing.
I agree. And, you know, as far as, you know, parents who are uncomfortable, obviously you want to introduce various tools to students at the appropriate age. You know, my daughter is 9 years old. You know, she's not going to be on Facebook. She's not going to be on Twitter right now. Mary Alice, who I mentioned earlier, she created a joint account with her son, who's elementary age, and so she monitors and tweets along with him. So she's teaching him very early. The earlier you can teach kids about how to use these tools in a positive way, and you as a parent can be the influencer, I think it starts at home. You know, the sooner you can do that, the better. And they're not even gonna, not that they're not going to eventually realize that, hey, there are some kids that aren't really using these tools in a very nice way. They see it in mainstream media too. They see it with our presidential candidates right now that are, you know, doing all kinds of negative things on Twitter. So I can't emphasize that it's parents first and foremost need to be role models for kids, and then so do the teachers. And so if you guys don't mind, I could quickly screen share and show some of your students just make sure that you can see it, what my students get. Can you guys see my screen?
You're good. Yep.
All right, so for those of you who are watching, this is our Burlington High School Help Desk blog. It's pretty well known. If you look over on the right-hand side, we have over 220,000 hits on this blog, which these are student-generated posts. We are ranked number 295 by Teach 100. So this is a daily ranking of blogs, I think globally. And this is, again, a student-generated blog. And what I've done here is, if you head on over to the About page, I have student blogs, and I have my second semester team right here. So I'm going to go ahead and show what this looks like. So if I click on student blogs, these are all my students right now who are in the Help Desk program. And they have to have various sections. They have to have an About Me section. They do weekly reflections on what they're learning and their skill development in terms of achieving the learning goals. They create ed tech training tutorials, screencast tutorials, and walkthroughs of various applications and web-based tools. And then they have a 20% time Genius Hour project. We call it our individual learning endeavor. And then they do app reviews. So I'm going to show you sort of my Timmy Sullivan. This is something that I really advocate for students. Can you guys see Timmy's blog?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Timmy is a senior, and I mean, he bought the domain timmysullivan.com, and this is WordPress. The platform doesn't really matter. Timmy liked WordPress. Many of my students like WordPress because it's highly professional, but I have students that are doing Weebly. Some kids have used Blogger, and kids could make a Google site. They could also use Wix. There's all kinds of platforms they can use, but you can see Timmy's blog has a lot of really rich content, and if I'm gonna, he's currently doing an internship with EdTech Teacher. He's written for Teachers with Apps. He's been a keynote speaker. This is him facilitating a Google Hangout on Air. So this showcases all of his skills and his work, and it's sort of the epitome of what we want our students to be capable of doing. And so this is he's got in the news section, so anytime he's been, he's been a guest blogger, he's been in a featured article, so on and so forth. He was nominated for the BAMI Award in the Student Voice category. He was interviewed by the BAM Radio Network, newspaper articles from our principal's blog. And then if you look and then he has a Meet Timmy page. So he's got his bio right here. If you look on the right, he's got his Twitter, his LinkedIn, his YouTube channel, Google+, Instagram, About.me. He's got an online resume with Re.Boo. And if you look, I'm going to just quickly go to my blog, you'll see quite a few similarities between my blog and Timmy's blog. And so I role model for the kids, you know, with the digital badges down the side, and, you know, like you, Billy, I wish I could blog more often, but, you know, I can always refer to my blog in terms of like design and just the type of content and so on and so forth, and then the kids emulate that. So again, I would, if you're at the high school level, you know, Caroline Akerley, she's another one. She has a great blog here. She has a similar template to Timmy's. This is her about page. And I mean, talk about a differentiating factor. I mean, there's not a lot of students that are walking out of high school with this kind of digital presence. And, you know, they're at the point now where many of them, you know, they do Google their name, and their blog is the first thing that comes up. This is my student Josh Boulos. He's an athlete, and he wants to pursue college-level athletics. And, you know, he's just got this fantastic portfolio. He's moderated Twitter chats. It's just really amazing what these kids can do when you give them access. And you mentioned that earlier. It starts with access, and I think that starts oftentimes with your school leadership. If the leaders of the school aren't willing to give access to these tools, that can be frustrating for teachers, especially those who, you know, want to give students the opportunity to just, you know, dip their toe into publishing for a global audience. And you know,
it's always, sorry to cut you off, Jen, it's always a glass half full. You know what I mean? People always see all the horrible things that could go wrong. And the reality is, look, these kids live in a different world, and there are going to be things that happen online and things will go wrong.
Yes.
But if we're going, like you said earlier, we have to be those models for our kids. And we have to show them the right way to use technology.
Yeah.
And when I had an issue with a student a while back, and some parents were concerned, and I just kind of made the reference to, hey, there was this gap when social media started, and it came on so rapidly that adults are clueless, and so are many teachers that didn't get on board and join the social media wave to figure out what it's about. And all of a sudden, it's taken over in education in a way where it's we're using it a lot more often, and some teachers are scared of it. They don't know how to use it, but we have to accept it in our schools, and we have to have people like you, people like us, who are leading the way in terms of teaching our kids how to use devices and technology the right way. So.
I mean, this to me is about networking. We're teaching kids how to network in the 21st century, right. And I always use my my journey to Burlington as an example. It wasn't until I started getting onto Twitter and understanding how to use Twitter for professional learning that I discovered Burlington, and, you know, connected with the folks over there and realized, you know, they have the same educational philosophy. It was just the right fit, and you know, I was able to meet all those people in their technology department, their school leadership, and I got my job that way. And a lot of people now are using Twitter, they're using LinkedIn, and this is how our kids are going to be able to compete in a global marketplace. And if we don't teach them how to network, I mean, there's the days of, you know, community-based job fairs where kids show up with a paper copy of their resume and cover letter. I mean, I guess they still exist, but I mean, the sky's the limit for kids. If they want to go to the West Coast, which I know a lot of New England students want to get out of this awful cold, you know, connect with people. It's so easy now to connect with people on the other side of the country, on the other side of the world, and to market yourself. This is about George Couros, when he linked my students' post, that's what he talked about. He talked about the fact that my students are being taught how to network in a digital age, and that is a huge advantage for them. They're going, you know, I work with seniors, and they're really going into a really competitive environment, and so I want them to achieve their goals and aspirations in terms of their career. So if they can do things like this and understand how to network digitally, you know, when George was tweeting their stuff, I said, you need to tweet to him and say thank you, you know, and follow him. And it's almost, I tell them what a Rolodex is. And I said, this is it's a digital Rolodex now. And I talked to them about LinkedIn because they're graduating, and I talked to them about the importance of LinkedIn. That's where recruiters are going. That's where HR professionals are going. And I see these poor kids that are graduating, some of them from college, and they don't even understand the importance of a polished LinkedIn profile picture. I mean, it looks like they've taken a selfie in the car, and they're on LinkedIn with that, or they're in their living room, and they need, you know, they don't know, I guess. And I don't want my students to go into that space and not be prepared. I want them to be not only prepared, but impressive, and get to the top and get those interviews that they want.
Yeah, that's where teaching. I teach a career prep course, and one of my first lessons is, what is your email address? And if it's something ridiculous, we will change it to be your name or a variation of your name, but there will be no, you know, cutesy references. I have not seen a lot of that lately in my current district, but I have met students historically who have email addresses that you don't put on a resume.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I had to learn that myself 15 years ago. My first email address was zephead@AOL.com.
Yeah, and I mean, that's part of digital citizenship too. I mean, digital citizenship is a broad umbrella term, really. And if I could recommend the work of Mike Ribble, he's somebody that your students should be connecting with. He's known as the godfather of digital citizenship. And again, his name is Mike Ribble. And Jason Olner is another gentleman who has just done absolutely amazing work with digital citizenship. And if you were to just Google 9 elements of digital citizenship, you'll come across Mike Ribble's website that really goes in depth into each component of that digital citizenship. So it's not just about online communication. That's a huge piece, and that sometimes gets a lot of the conversation stems around that particular piece. But digital citizenship encompasses, you know, digital safety. You know, the new iOS 9.3 update. Everybody's raving about Night Shift, and that is designed to be more easy on your eyes, because a lot of people use their devices in the evening, and there are studies that show that is causing potential damage to your eyes, and it disrupts sleep patterns, and especially for kids. You know, they're up late, hopefully doing homework and working, but maybe they're on Snapchat, I don't know, but you know, little of both, you know, but Mike's work is just outstanding, and I would highly recommend folks look at that. You know, they also talk about safety and security. You know, sometimes you find out kids' passwords. What's your password? Password. Like, their password is the word password. And so, you know, we want to talk to them about keeping their digital information safe and secure. And, you know, I really have to recommend Mike Ribble's work. Also, along with Common Sense Media, they produce some great content. If you wanted to integrate this into your classroom, I think the Creeper assignment is a great way to introduce kids to what is the current state of your digital footprint, and are you happy with it? Do you even have one? Sometimes kids do the Creeper assignment and there's nothing. You know, there's nothing that pops up, and that's just as bad as something negative popping up. So when kids realize, hey, there's nothing on me, there's okay, I got some work to do. I want to create a good, strong presence.
Yeah.
So I would advocate for Mike and Jason Olner, Mary Alice Curran. In the Digital Citizenship Summit, Mary Alice is teaming up with those folks that I just mentioned, and they're going to be bringing digital citizenship summits across the country. So these are going to be almost Ed Camp style professional development conferences to really get every single educator on board, because we don't want any educators saying, well, this is not my responsibility. If you use any technology in any way, shape, or form with your students, it is your responsibility.
That's a huge problem, Jen. Sorry to cut you off again, but that's just, there's so many teachers think, oh, I'm here to teach this content, and they just don't see it as their obligation to teach the whole child, and it's baffling to me.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, if you're not, I always advocate for baby steps too in terms of technology use. So if you have some students who are, their heads are about to explode because, there's just so much out there, I'd start with something, private, I guess you could say, and that would be Google Classroom. So Google Classroom is a great digital workflow tool. It's super intuitive. If any of your students want to become paperless teachers, it's a great way to become paperless. That's just kind of an added benefit. But
Jen, we're actually using Google Classroom with our students for this course.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, both Becca and I use it. She uses it with her high school students, and I use it with my third grade students. I literally assign every single assignment through Google Classroom.
It's fantastic, and if you're using it with kids, even like especially elementary and middle school students, you can have an online discussion in the stream. So you could post a video, you could post a question, and allow your students to have that digital dialogue in that private space before you take it to the next level into a public arena such as Twitter, and then talk to your students about what are the expectations of digital communication when we're in this space. And I would have the kids come up with the digital classroom rules, and I hate the word rules, but maybe expectations.
Norms.
Say it again. Norms. Yeah.
Norms.
Yeah, and especially with the younger kids, and then you might just want to, if you're working with elementary students, you have a teacher Twitter account or a classroom account, so the students aren't revealing their identities. But you could have, a tweeter of the day that you're going to assign one of your second or third graders that, okay, you get to send out some tweets today. You always want to get parental permission first. I've worked with elementary students before. We did a Google Hangout like this with Billy and your students. We did a live Google Hangout with the developers of Hopscotch. And before we went live, we made sure that the classroom teacher made sure that all the students had permission to be on camera, and if there was any parent that felt uncomfortable with that, that child wasn't in the view of the camera. So you need to be smart about it, and always protect the safety and of the students and the identity. I talk to my students about when they Google me, they find out all kinds of stuff about my career background, but they don't find out any personal information. So then we can have a conversation about what's the difference between sharing personal and professional information, and is there anything personal, and if so, is it appropriate? You can share things that are personal, but they still need to be appropriate. So this is complex. It's definitely a complex issue, but it's part of your job, and you got to do the hard work so that your student in your classroom isn't the one making those headlines that are negative. You want the opposite to happen. And so there was a question about LinkedIn expiring. Not to my knowledge. I don't think it expires. And if you're looking for a job, it's definitely a place where you want to have a strong presence. I think LinkedIn is key.
Absolutely. And I don't want to butt in. I have many different thoughts. LinkedIn, what were we talking about? My head is just flying with ideas.
Google Classroom.
One question is about Classroom, and for full disclosure, as we've been incorporating the discussion element in our class here for EDU300, I think we've had some hurdles with making the discussion flow, and I wonder honestly if it's a digital native or classroom native versus adults who are used to using Blackboard or other formats, because we found that in Classroom the fact that the thread doesn't nest,
right,
is actually kind of confusing and hard to follow, and we've thought about going to Plus. Do you find, Jen, that your students just sort of naturally have adapted to the scrolling through the feed?
I personally haven't found that because we don't use it. We just use it for workflow. They submit links to their blogs, and that's how I grade it. But I do have several colleagues who use it extensively for online discussion, and they have with success. So I think it probably depends on the frequency of the discussion. You know, if you're going to be, if you want that threaded or that nesting ability, like you mentioned, another, if you teach this again, and classroom isn't meeting your needs, first give them feedback. Mm-hmm. Tell Google we want more control over an organized classroom discussion.
Right.
But the other, I did an online sort of webinar, and we used Edmodo. And Edmodo, the facilitators of that course were able to, I forget how they did it exactly, but it was very organized, the way that they posed the discussion questions, and the conversation did flow. They were able to categorize it. So that's another possibility.
Maybe we can just get used to sort of messier chatting.
Yeah, and I would say Google Plus. You mentioned that. Again, I know everybody's say that.
Sorry, Chef. Angela, you've been blowing up Google Plus, and I just realized all of your awesome contributions. So I'm sorry that we haven't acknowledged as much. We haven't gone too much into Plus, but your posts have been great. Just FYI.
I mean,
so
cool.
Here we can use that.
Google Plus is the best social network most educators aren't using. You can have really deep, rich discussions. You can have categories. You set up a community. You know, you and Billy could create a community for your class, and you could have different categories so people could post within those specific categories. Oftentimes I see in communities there's an introduction category, and then if it's an ed tech course, there could be a category for iPads, category for Chromebooks. If you were going to have device-specific conversations, there could be a category called SAMR, where if you want to talk about really different examples of moving along the SAMR model, not just, you know, a digital worksheet, but how do we get to this point? How do we get to the redefinition phase where we're doing a live Google Hangout on air with a classroom on the other side of the world? So I love Google Plus because I know exactly which community I can reach out to when I have a question or if I have a need. And people respond more often on Google Plus versus Twitter. My tweets get lost sometimes. So if I need something, and I want a quick answer, a quick response, I'm going to go to Google Plus. And I'll tell you one more tool, just to overwhelm your students even more. Just try one thing. But another tool is Voxer. It's a walkie-talkie app. You can leave audio messages. If you're working with high school kids, it's a great tool because no phone numbers are exchanged. So you could quickly you could create a Voxer group, name it the name of your class, and you could just throw in messages to your students, audio. There's also, you can do text, you can send images. Any of your students who have aspirations to become foreign language teachers, our foreign language department was using Voxer extensively with their students and loved it. And those Voxer audio messages that the students were recording can be sent directly into Google Classroom. So that was a really quick and easy method of assessment that our foreign language teachers loved. I showed the world language department chair one afternoon. The next day she sent me a tweet and she had a picture of the kids and they were all using Voxer. But in terms of like on-demand PD, even if you have like a grade level team in your building or within your district, you can create a Voxer group and just bounce ideas off each other. It's just a quick way to communicate.
That's so funny. Chef, this is where, pardon me, digression. I offer a public apology to Matt Druitt-Card about Voxer because apparently I need to get on board with Voxer.
You may get to the point where you have to shut your notifications off because it's...
My thing is, I'm one of those people, this is where we need to, I think a lot about professional collaboration and how that actually requires the same skills we use to differentiate with students. Yeah, with students, I find myself totally comfortable with different, presentation modalities. But professionally, I'm like, darn it, I'm going to type, and I will only type. Do not expect me to ever talk about anything. GHO has been a challenge, so maybe, Voxer is a way to differentiate the way we collaborate professionally, and I will write a blog about that time that Jen Scheffer convinced me to get on board with Voxer.
Just try. It's not for everybody. I know some people who have tried it and they just got off and they stopped using it. I'm in a couple different Voxer groups for a couple different ed tech initiatives that I'm a part of. But I like using it with my students, to be totally honest. They'll Vox me if I'm not in the help desk, and they'll be like, "Chef, where are you?" And I'll get that notification, and if I'm in a classroom with a teacher, I can head back over to the help desk, or I can Vox them right back and say, what do you guys need? Is everything okay? And again, that is modeling the tool for students. We're working on NEASC accreditation, and we have a student who's a senior, and he's going to be one of the administrators on the creation of the NEASC blog. It's a WordPress blog. So he got on Voxer because his schedule is very sporadic now. So we follow each other on Voxer. So if I need him, I can just Vox him and say, "Hey, Nate, and he's also going to be working on our TEDx event." So when I showed it to him, he was like, "Oh, this is awesome." I said, "I know. It's like leaving a voicemail, but nobody likes to listen to voicemail. So you can just listen to the Vox whenever you have time." I'm connected with some people out in California. Voxer is the ideal tool for us because of the time zone difference. So like you were saying, it's the right tool for the right task that's applicable to the classroom, and it's also applicable to professional development. Yeah. Your students don't have to be on everything to start building a PLN, but if your students, your teacher candidates, build a PLN and it's meaningful. I mean, but about 5 of my PLN members are on speed dial on my telephone now, my good old telephone, my iPhone, and they're literally in my favorites, and we have developed a very strong relationship because we initially got to know each other through Twitter.
Yeah.
And
that's why Jen's here tonight. I mean,
yeah, and unless you try it and unless it happens to you, you will not be a believer. But when it happens to you and you get it, then you can really teach your students how to do it.
Right.
And you can model it for them. But if you don't do it, if you're just going next door, I mean, to the person whose classroom is across the hall or on the second floor above you, I mean, yeah, you guys might have some great ideas to bounce off each other, but what if you could connect with people in California? I mean, you can have a low quality local network, and you can have a very high quality digital network, or in the opposite is true.
It's so true, Jen, because I teach in a small district. Sorry to keep cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
But I teach in a really small district where we literally have one 7th grade social studies teacher. So who does he talk to? Mm-hmm. Who do you talk to when that's all you have? You have yourself. So, for me, PLN has been an absolute game changer. But I love that you can use the PLN, adjust it to meet your needs. You don't have to tweet all the time, but you can use it to connect with math teachers who are, well respected and gather ideas for lessons if that's what you choose. You can choose to connect your students with other students. I mean, there's entry points for everywhere.
Absolutely, and I know that we're running out of time. I thought, oh, well, what am I going to say for an hour? But I'm a talker, apparently.
Well, this is just such a broad topic. Digital is such a giant umbrella that you can go anywhere with it, and so many conversations, just natural conversations like this to be had to really wrap your brain around it. But I guess are there any like must look at resources for our students? Like you saw our doc. Is there anything we're missing there that you would like to add or?
Well, I mentioned those individuals, Mike Ribble, Jason Ulner, Mary Alice Curran, David Polgar. is also part of the digital citizenship crusade, I guess. There's a hashtag on Twitter. It's TechTeamMA, and once a month, the second Thursday of each month, there are a group of students, primarily from Massachusetts. There's about 6 or 7 different student tech teams, and we rotate monthly, and the students are moderating a Twitter chat. And if your students search the hashtag TechTeamMA, they'll come across tweets from me and from some other educators, but they're bound to come across some of the chats that we've had. And you know, I would recommend that if when your students go out and actually are in the classroom, that's another tool that they could, or another activity, I guess, they could try with their students, is a Twitter chat. And my students use TweetDeck, which is it allows them to schedule their tweets ahead of time, because they were not used to that kind of communication, that like quick thinking. So we allowed them to think about their answers ahead of time, and that's important for them to have that skill. To you know, they only have 140 characters, so it's a great writing activity as well. If I wasn't a technology person, teacher, I'd be probably an English teacher, and my students say that to me all the time. You're so hard on our writing, and I'm like, well, that's what this is about, you guys. So in terms of resources, I would definitely say Common Sense Media has, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. They have some great lesson plans that are already in place, but the creeper.
I use those and manipulate them all the time. You know, I look at what I'm doing, and I pull the pieces from Common Sense and just kind of. And if you're not as comfortable, you know, you can use the lessons as they are, because they're pretty solid. I like them.
They are. There's a lot of simulation and a lot of, which is good, but I'd rather do something that's real. Like the creeper assignment is real and authentic, and I'd rather do a Twitter chat. Have them do some, you know, I'd have them create an about.me page. If I noticed earlier in the chat, somebody said, well, what about parents who don't want their children publishing for a global audience? Start with about.me, you know, or a similar tool just to give a brief bio. And you
got to respect parents' wishes, but also just slowly kind of really be transparent with what you do. You know, that's part of the reason I started the blog, is for parents to understand, hey, this is what my room looks like. It's a little different, but this is why I'm doing this. And it's all about your students, all about your child, and just having them kind of make that adjustment to the world that they're living into, and that they'll be living in, and that things are much different. And my approaches are different, but here's what it looks like, and this is why I do it. So to work with parents as well, and just kind of get them ready where their kids need to be.
Absolutely. And if you send out a letter at the beginning of the school year, these are some of the tools we're going to be using. Another tool that I would highly recommend is Remind, or there's similar tools like that. But if you get your parents on board with Remind or a similar tool where the parents are getting those text notifications about important school information instead of a pile of paperwork, I know for me as a busy working mother, I really appreciate as much digital information as possible. And parents can always opt out and say, you know what, I don't want text, I just give me the paper. But for the ones who do, give them that choice as well. Becca, you don't have to raise your hand. Go ahead.
I'm working on being assertive. One, I have colleagues who use Remind and absolutely love it. And on the topic of parents, I was at the MEA spring conference on Saturday, and I did a session on tech with Tom Shaltre from Pond Cove Elementary. Shout out to Tom. Billy dropped in later. But there were a lot of questions about parent awareness and parent concerns, and one, Common Sense Media has a great link where there's an entire archive with resources to address parent concerns about their students' work being on the internet. If you don't feel comfortable answering questions yourself or you want support for that, it's a great resource. And I'm going to paraphrase Tom's anecdote, but he spoke about the one parent who opts their student out of having their work online, and that once, the other 18 kids have their work on the classroom site, chances are the parent's going to call and say, hey, why isn't my kid's stuff up there? Once they see really what the purpose is of sharing the student's work.
Yep.
So, there's always the possibility for embracement from reluctant parents once they see what you're really doing with their student's presence online, what their student is doing online, because it's all about celebrating kids' strengths and their work and, their presence in the online and physical community. So,
yeah.
Billy?
Sorry, I was cutting you off, Becca. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, go for it.
Yeah, one of the things I do at the beginning of the year is I kind of look at all my tools. Here's Google Classroom, here's KidBlog, here's Seesaw, and a number of other things that I use, and I make parent educational videos with the kids. So as I'm introducing the videos to the kids, they help me create a video to show parents how to use it. So parents have that.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's right on my. I house that on my YouTube channel. There's another way you can know, and in those moments, teaching the kids. Here's QuickTime. Here's iMovie. Here's the tools we'll be using this year.
Yeah.
That's that's a fantastic approach. On the Help Desk blog, we have a parent resource page for some of your students if they want to check it out. And what I did was, I'm going to just screen share really fast because I should probably update it, but if we check out parent resources, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
So I've got, CyberWise is an awesome resource. There's a video there. There's your Common Sense Media. There's resources from Google. There's a good-to-know guide to staying safe and secure online, Google safety tips, tips for parents, more videos. There's a Google's Family Safety YouTube channel that's excellent. Connect Safely is another fantastic organization. This is a parent's guide to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube. These are resources from Facebook, the Family Safety Center, Help Your Teen Play It Safe. There's some folks from Facebook, Edutopia, the Parent's Guide to 21st Century Learning, Transition Resources for Parents for elementary, middle, and high school. Must Hear and Listen to Resources for Parents, Will Richardson, the BAM Radio Network, PBS Parents Page. This is pre-K through high school. This is probably more appropriate for the lower grade levels. And then there's a global parent-teacher Twitter chat. There's a hashtag PT chat. It stands for parent-teacher chat for parents who want to get involved too. So that was the very first blog post I ever wrote on the Help Desk blog. So feel free to check that out. And I tried to make it a one-stop shop for teachers and parents.
Awesome. So Jen, we'll go ahead and we'll include the link to your Help Desk website on our module doc. If we haven't already, I think Becca might have done that. And we just really want to thank you for hanging tonight. Is there any questions, Laura or Angela, that you have before we let Jen go?
No, I think this was great. I'm going to check out her site and kind of fiddle with that.
The biggest thing, too, is the student blog. The student blog page is really where the magic is, I think. And there's, for the past 3 years, examples of student blogs. And there are blogs in there that are A's, B's, C's, and D's. So you can see the full spectrum of, the different you'll come across some blogs and you'll say, well, this one doesn't look as good as the other one, aesthetically and content. But I think this year is probably by far the best as far as kids, my Help Desk students really stepping it up and really creating some pretty impressive content. So I'm very proud of them. So.
You know what, a thought came to mind, Jen. Would you mind if we shared your syllabus for them to look at so they can kind of wrap their brains around what your Help Desk looks like?
Absolutely, yep, sure. That's on the About page as well. All of the syllabus is on there and all the resources, assignments and projects and whatnot. So
just phenomenal. Everything's phenomenal, but I really enjoyed that syllabus for me, just kind of thinking about what you really do with your kids and what it looks like throughout the semester. It really helped me picture it, along with student work examples on the website.
Yeah, it's a good job. It's a fun job, and it's a lot of personalization of the curriculum, and I'm fortunate. So yeah, I get out there and build your PLN, and you guys have two great teachers that know their stuff, so take advantage of everything that they're bringing to you, because they're, like Billy said, they're leading the way, and you got two great role models. So
thank you, Jen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The course more than anything, our goal is to shift mindset. And we want these kids, I always call them kids, that's the third grade. Sorry,
It's all good.
we can shift your mindset and get you thinking this way. And this course, it's not about the grade. It's about the mindset and get you guys ready for the classroom. And you got to want it yourself. You got to want to take the reins of it. And
Yeah.
LN is just such an incredible way for you to connect and learn and grow. And without us, we're just there to help as much as we can and answer questions. All right, Becca, what do you think? You out?
I feel great. Thank you, Jen, for taking the time. I will definitely be GHOing with you again, and now that I have your number, texting you and tweeting at you as I work to develop. Students don't know I'm working to develop a broadcast media team for the future at the school where I work, and I know that there will need to be a lot of front-loading digital citizenship and defining communities. So, Chef, I'm going to be calling on you for some advice there. It's really exciting. And Sarah, Angela, and everybody else, remember that Billy and I, even if we are not physically there regularly, we are digitally available all the time. You just need to reach out. So,
all right.
And have a good night.
Awesome.
all right,
You too.
bye, guys.